This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 76.
You think I'm holding back? You think I'm holding back? I'm out to save you.
Welcome back, Defenders. This is Chris taking the reins once again in the second episode of Luke Cage. That is season 1, episode 2, Luke Cage. Oh, it's a goodie. As I said, I'm Chris, and we've got the rest of our hosts here.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
Hi, and I'm rounding out the group, John, number 3.
Mm-hmm.
We just call it with the number 3. That's it. He's a minion now. He doesn't even get the name. It's just number 3.
I guess in Star Trek that'd be like working in engineering or something.
Yeah, I'm a red shirt.
Oh no!
I will fall off the top of a building.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
We've got another
As a red shirt, I mean.
We've got another 11 episodes to go here, John. We need
exactly.
you. We need you. So I guess we're back with episode 2, Code of the Streets.
Yeah, I really like this, I have to say. The code of the street, I like that idea of the code, and even amongst thieves or whatever, that when it's broken, it's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
No, completely. This, even though I did call parts of this episode, it still stung. It was such a fantastically shot episode, I think. And I think just even the use of the camera in this one, what the camera was a thematic device. And I didn't get that from episode 1.
Yeah.
Got this from episode 2, and I'm like, okay, it's going strength to strength already.
Yeah.
It's a good sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we see that the barbershop is the hub of the local community, quite literally.
Definitely.
Loads of stuff going on.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into it, this is a spoiler-filled podcast for Luke Cage. We do cover our episodes, one episode at a time throughout Luke Cage. This is our second episode, coming out on October 4th. We're recording it on September 24th, just ahead of the release of Luke Cage. So we haven't got any feedback in yet, obviously. But if you want to send in your feedback, you can email us to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com or leave us some feedback over on the website at defenderstvpodcast.com just by clicking on the feedback button. You can record about 90 seconds of your thoughts and we'll drop it into the episode before we release it. Hopefully you've been enjoying Luke Cage as much as we have.
And of course, you can subscribe and review us over at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or go to any other good podcast catcher and search Defenders TV Podcast, where again, you can subscribe or leave a review. Reviews are always good because they help other people find independent podcasts such as ourselves.
But more importantly, get the word out there. You have friends who like Luke Cage or probably are now binging Luke Cage. Bring them over where we will discuss every nuance of this episode and this TV show. But on top of that, as the guy said, we need feedback. More than that, we want to create this community. So as John and Derek have said, we're over on Facebook, we're on Twitter. So come to us, talk, let's get geeky.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And if you want to share the episodes, you can share them on any of your own social media platforms. Hopefully, maybe you'll create your own community of friends that are listening to the podcast and watching the episodes of Luke Cage.
Yeah, and of course, for those of you new to the podcast, we cover the episodes with our 5 favorite points. Good, bad, or indifferent. We go through the episode and look at our 5 main aspects that we really liked, maybe didn't like so much or whatever, and we discuss them through. But I think before we start on that, we normally give a few little details about this episode. So, Derek, who was the writer and director of this episode, Code of the Street?
Well, for the second episode in a row, Chio Coker, the creator of the show and showrunner, wrote the episode. It was directed again by Paul McGuigan, the director of Sherlock, a lot of Sherlock episodes, and the movie Lucky Number 11. So not a huge amount extra to add this time because obviously they did the first episode as well.
One thing though, just with Paul's directing style, especially with Sherlock, you see it in this episode.
Yes, you
the
do.
Jumps, the jump back and forth, the opening that actually is the closing. Oh,
it really does feel like he's taking in some of his stuff. I've definitely got a point about it later on as well.
Oh, excellent.
As we go into it.
So do we want to then jump into John's synopsis of this episode, perhaps, so we can get to the points?
Sure, why not? Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes needs his stolen money back so he can cover for his cousin, Maria Dillard's misuse of public money that was used to fix up his club, Harlem's Paradise. With Chico gone to ground, Cottonmouth, Shades and Tone make an ominous call to Pop's barbershop, where Chico used to work, to try and find him. But little do they know that the NYPD detectives Knight and Scarf, investigating the murders of Dante and Shamik, have also taken an interest in his whereabouts. The detectives call on Pops, who, feeling responsibility for Chico's late father, Fredo, asks Luke to track him down before Stokes and the police get to him. With Chico located, a parley is set up with Cottonmouth for the exchange of his money and Chico's safety. But an unexpected tip-off to Tone and Shades leads to unintended repercussions that break the code of the streets and set a determined Luke Cage on a very different path in Harlem.
So, boys, before we actually get into the points, is there any general thoughts that we want to talk about now?
Again, I think for me, I love that this was all focused very much around Pops' barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a complete hub. I mean, loads of different things, like tragedy, comedy, fun, history, loads of it. And a few people from some other shows popped up in this episode to say hello and cause utter chaos in the process.
Absolutely,
Oh,
yeah.
completely.
Yeah. Turk. Damn you. Your big mouth. But now he's scooted back down to downtown, to Hell's Kitchen.
And I have a point on him too. But there's one bit I wanted to bring up with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the previous show that we did cover, which was Jessica Jones' midway points of Daredevil 1 and Daredevil 2, we had a great little thematic piece that we used to always do. Actually, to say, I meant John. You had Whiskey Watch.
I did. And strangely, I have a whiskey watch for this episode as well.
Interesting.
Oh,
In
wow.
fact, it's one of my points.
Oh, okay, brilliant. What I wanted to suggest is what we're seeing here in 2 episodes in is a book watch.
Yeah, exactly. For all new library heads out there, we can do a book watch, and this actually loads. I hope that they keep on doing it because, it's been really good. And I suppose, actually, this is going to be my first point. I'm going to kick it off. It is that, again, I kind of love that discussion between Pops and Luke Cage at the start. The whole, the history. I mean, going through things like Shaft, going through, Walter Mosley's Little Green and Easy Rawlins, and also then talking about Crispus Attucks. A really little summary of some important figures in American history. Crispus Attucks, or Attucks, I think it is, is widely held as being one of the first casualties, if not the first casualty of the American War of Independence in Boston, shot by the British at the start of that war for independence. You have Walter Mosley, effectively, writing literature where you have Easy Rawlins as black character as the central detective, in its day, a huge sort of, change in what would have been expected, I suppose, in that sense. But really consumable as well. And obviously, for me anyway, at least Shaft being certainly a huge, sort of cultural icon from the 70s, in that era of film. So, I know it was remade recently, maybe about 10 years ago now.
With Nick Fury himself, yeah.
With Nick Fury himself, yeah. So, just a few little snippets of this, and of course it all comes back at the end where, with the guy holding the gun to Luke Cage's head, he recounts the Crispus Attucks story right in front of the headquarters for Maria Dillard's political sort of campaign, and the new center that she kind of wants to do in his name, sort of appropriating his name. And I suspect that Luke Cage probably feels that it's slightly inappropriate that she's doing that, given the bag that she's holding as she walks into her office.
Yeah.
And I just, I thought that all coming together and finishing off the episode was really cool. So that's, Book Watch is Walter Mosley's Little Green, detective series. And actually, Little Green is Easy Rawlins comes back from what they think is the dead and does a ton of detective work to find out various things. And of course, here we have Luke Cage. People may have thought he had died in prison, given the experiment, coming back. And we learn from Pops that he's good at tracking people down, that he used to do it for a living. So, there's that similarity there in a nutshell between these two characters.
Absolutely. I kind of like that we're doing book watch. I like that Pops describes him as from the first time he met Luke Cage, he was the well-read criminal, or ex-con. I really like that idea that this is going to be the thing for the show, that he's going to have a book that'll hopefully express something about the episode. Speaking of which, my first point, much like our last episode, my first point is about the name of the episode and its connection to the Gang Starr song. Yeah, so pretty obvious one here to be completely fair. I didn't have to do a huge amount of work here. The episode's called Code of the Street. The song itself is referencing the fact that young kids growing up in New York, they kind of jump into criminality for fun, stealing a car here and there, beating up a couple of people, and then it gets worse and gets worse and gets worse, but you do have to respect the code of the street. What you see in this episode is very much that there is a code there, which one of the guys crosses over the line on, and is taken out by Cottonmouth, for that reason. So very, very much, very expressive in the song, about this fact, and Cottonmouth calls it out. He says there is supposed to be rules to this shit in the city, you wouldn't think so by the way this guy acted, is kind of the phrase there. So not too difficult to make the connection between why this song was chosen as the name of the episode.
Yeah, the 30th floor fall.
Oh god, yeah. And the pure venom coming from Cottonmouth when he calls him Cottonmouth. I'm like, that's kind of very much premonition of what's to come. I'm like, someone's going to call him Cottonmouth and shit is going to go down.
Absolutely.
There were a few moments in this episode where, quite frankly, I was kind of curling into the back seat. I was kind of recoiling slightly from the screen because I was wondering what is going to happen. Like, Cottonmouth is so ominous, so sort of threatening in this. Like, it's this, it's the swan on the lake. It's the serene calmness that he holds. But underneath, in his head, he is just processing it a million times a minute, and he can switch to the Black Swan kind of in an instant.
Absolutely.
And really sort of take out his fury. Like, it's really, really good, I think. That really kind of just had me wondering what was going to go down, and I did kind of was like trying to reach for the pillow a bit, maybe, the cushion, just because I thought it was going to be pretty gruesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the connection within this song, and obviously the flashback to the three guys as kids, together with Chico's father, Cottonmouth, and Pops, all as young kids, getting the description as to why he's called Cottonmouth and why Pops is called Pops. Very interesting. Didn't expect that. Thought that was all going to be about him being a friendly father figure to the neighborhood. It's not. It's because he goes snap, crackle, pop, and then knocks a guy out. Very interesting. Cottonmouth, because he'd lost a number of teeth. People were calling him Cottonmouth because he can't eat any solid foods, basically. So you can see why he takes that very offensively when people are calling him Cottonmouth. So, quite a cool idea.
Yeah, no, and I just, one bit I want to ask you guys is, do you think he's slightly too close to Fisk in the portrayal at this point, in that we talked about that Fisk, back in season 1, that felt like deja vu to me just in this last few minutes.
Right.
Because we were talking about that almost like coiled adder like Wilson Fisk, where everything's serene and calm, and then in a moment's notice he flips. And I'm wondering, are they just doing it for this point because of the relationship he had with Pops, or is this this is now Cottonmouth is the Black Kingpin?
There's similarities there, absolutely. But I think the important difference is that from the get-go, Cottonmouth is a known criminal. I mean, is effectively, and we do find this out that, the relationship between, Cottonmouth and Mariah is that they're cousins, and like she doesn't want to be seen with him. So, I mean, there was none of that suggestion with Kingpin, but I mean, it is one of those things that, you know, psychopaths, sociopaths are much more prevalent. They're not all these killers that they are there in day-to-day life. So that, you know, this kind of behavior is normal. It's kind of, to an extent, passive aggressive. I mean, in this episode, because of, how he was in Pop's barbershop, because of, those kind of ominous moments, there was a moment where I thought that he was potentially going to do in Mariah in his club when they were talking about and chatting between themselves whilst the music was playing. I really thought something bad was going to happen. And I like that because I think it really keeps you guessing as the audience about what is his motives, what drives him, what is he going to do. I do think he probably is a bit more level compared to Wilson Fisk.
Maybe, yeah.
To an extent.
I do like the idea though, because obviously there has been a void left by Kingpin going off to prison and at the end of Daredevil season 1. We don't know whether this takes place after the end of season 2 of Daredevil. I presume there's not going to be a huge amount of crossover there, but we know it's taken place after Wilson Fisk has been taken down. So there is a need now for a new Kingpin of crime, and maybe Cottonmouth's going to step up to that. You know, maybe that's his path. He's going to step up to take over the other gangs of Harlem. And maybe the rest of New York, you never know. He could be looking for that expansive role at the top of the top.
But again, we don't have Diamondback in the show yet. So, you know, what's the relationship here? I mean, this is slightly like Wilson Fisk in that we didn't see him for the first 2 episodes, I don't think. And then, you know, he came bursting onto the scene in episode 3 or 4. I can't quite remember. But so, I mean, there is that similarity, I think, going on here as well. And Chris, what's your first point?
I'm going to go straight out to it. Oh, Pop.
Pop.
I know I said in episode 75 when we were reviewing episode 1 of Luke Cage, it's just that it still hurt.
I know.
They built up this character as this loving, caring father figure type for this Harlem community. And they gave him the backstory that he wasn't a saint. He did have the snap, crackle, pop background. He had this code or this understanding, like the Switzerland bit with Cottonmouth. So because of this relationship that they had, Cottonmouth has almost given Pops this basic neutral ground area that he will not go near him. And so that basically, it was alluded to that Pops was this kind of very much savior character. He took the kids in. But that's potentially even more of a reason why it was painful to watch almost. And it's like literally from just one episode. And I talked at the very beginning of this about the camera work that the director had used. He slowed down the camera as the bullet entered Pop's neck.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, no, he's dead. I was
Really
like,
good
no,
choice.
it's not. But Chico may be alive, by the way. Did you notice that?
No.
Chico had an oxygen mask on himself,
I did
whereas
not see
Pops was in the full autopsy bag or the coroner bag.
Right.
I was like, okay, so
Interesting.
Chico may be back. But yeah, no, I think it's just it's quite sad now, and I know it was the perfect thematic kind of reasoning that they put it in. Is that this is the turning point for Luke?
Exactly. Yeah.
We were wondering what this was going to be for a while in terms of what was the lever that was going to push Luke over the edge to become this hero for Harlem rather than a hero for hire, but a hero for Harlem. And this is it. By the way, that scene, but we can get to it in a bit, that scene was amazing. Where like Tone's coming down the stairs and in slow-mo with the 2 machine guns, and you see everyone slowly start the realization. Fantastic acting by the whole cast there.
Yeah,
but just really, I was just, Pop is basically my point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Frankie Faison, really, in a very short time, ultimately 2 episodes, just the warmth of his character, but then the depth of the character in that, he had been on the wrong side of the tracks. He'd done some time, or done a lot of time. He knew the bad people, but he had kind of come out on the other side and had taken a different path. And I mean, but then, in addition to that, there was a warmth about him that he's looking after Chico. I mean, that moment where, he doesn't know whether he wants to hug him or effectively punch him when Chico walks back through the door. He's asking, he's calling in his chips, he's calling in his favors, with Luke Cage, please go and track him down. Let's get him safe. And then let's do it by the code. And, the history that he has. So, in a very short time, and I mean, this just shows the quality of the actor and also the writing, just how they have established this character with such a connection to Luke, a warmth, and yet a hugely complex history that he's managed to get across to the audience. And I think that's fantastic. And that then, by the end of episode 2, you are going, Pops. Oh my God, he is dead. We learn that he is effectively Luke Cage's father-in-law here.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's another sharp, emotional, knife to Luke Cage, which, first of all, it was his wife, and now it's his wife's father, his father-in-law. So, this is, great. It's a meaningful connection for Luke Cage to change here.
Absolutely. John, do you want to take us on with your next point?
Yeah, my next point is another Wire reference. I know we've done a few here before, and it's also my whiskey watch. So we see Misty Knight and Raphael Scarf sat on the bonnet of a police car.
You can say hood of the police car.
Hood of a police car, yeah. No, I sat on the hood of a police car, drinking a bottle of whiskey. In this case, it's Jameson's whiskey. Obviously, we're an Irish podcast, and one of the things we noticed was that Jessica Jones doesn't like Irish whiskey. She's more of a Scotch girl. But they're there on the hood, drinking whiskey, getting drunk, discussing the day's cases and all that, and about how surely Luke Cage must have been, injured. He had bullet holes in his t-shirt. This immediately took me back to Bunk and McNulty under an underpass somewhere in Baltimore, drinking on the hood of their car, getting drunk. I think even McNulty probably had sex under there as well at one stage. So, okay, they've still got a lot of catching up to do in New York compared to Baltimore as to what cops do in their free time. But I mean, just that nice little nod to that, I think was really probably quite nice.
Yeah.
Whether it was supposed to be like that or whether it's just by sheer coincidence, I don't know. But
I think just the reference of Scarf turning around to Misty and going, "You're drunk," when she makes the assumption that potentially Luke is a powered individual, and he goes, "Oh, you're drunk. Look at you," which is just exactly like what Bunk would say when McNulty makes a leap during his investigation.
So that's really that's one of my little sort of things for people to watch out is maybe some of the Wire references, if
absolutely.
there are them. Or, I don't want to overcook the Wire reference, but I mean, to me, that it
overheat the Wire.
Oh
yeah.
I didn't, but it felt like good familiar to me.
Absolutely. So we're not going to talk about Luke Cage following the money then? No. Okay.
Well, he did, didn't he?
He did a bit. He did a bit, but we'll leave that one. Speaking of Misty Knight, I want to talk about my favourite scene of hers in this episode. The basketball scene. My God, so cool.
Yes.
That was a really, really, I liked her challenging the young kids in Harlem, where they're just kind of looking at her as a normal woman, and not only a woman, she's also a policewoman. So you don't trust her, you don't talk to her, and she challenges them to a game of basketball, 1-on-1, 5 baskets each, and makes 3 3-point shots, that we see on screen, and they are fantastic. I love that she's got this attitude that she really works the style to put the guy down as well. He's kind of going, she throws the ball at him and goes, "Ladies first," really nice style about her in this scene, really playful, but again, gets across the point that she owns this basketball court. Nobody can take that away from her. Love that she's already got her name written in the corner of the basketball court, reserved for the special stars of the local community who have played really well in that court before. Love that little touch.
Oh yeah, and 87, was it? That was when she owned the court?
Maybe. That seems like a long time ago for Misty Knight.
I know, that's why I saw the 87. I was like,
I don't know whether it's a year or whether that was the score in the game, maybe,
Or the number of
okay.
baskets she had.
something like that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was like going, that
She'd be like 12.
yeah, well, I was more going, she'd be a lot younger. I was like,
Maybe she
No.
owned it when she was 6, you never know.
yeah. Say, hey, so I've met some 6-year-olds out in basketball courts just in Dublin, and they're scary enough. So yeah, no, it could be. Sorry, John, you were going to say.
I really loved how, like the guy she was up against kind of went to hand her the basketball, but then put it at her feet, and she's just kind of there going, wow. Like a reaction.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to play it like this, are we? And then, like, she's doing all this in a, they're not high heels, but they're not low
flats,
heels.
like,
they're not
yeah.
flat. So, additional props to her.
Absolutely. Chris, do you want to take us on with your next point?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want to chat about the show of Luke's power.
Mm-hmm.
His powers, I should say, the unbreakable skin, which actually also, additionally, I found out he used to be called Iron Skin,
Right.
and it's been retconned recently to Titanium Skin.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, completely aside. But I wanted to talk about actually the bullets bouncing off his skin.
Mm.
And so we've got two fantastic views of this in this episode. In that, at the beginning, obviously, in Pop's barbershop, as the bullets are blasting through, you see them. The first bit is where it bounces off his chest, and you can see it full on bounce shrapnel. And then when he starts protecting the other child, and they are blasting off his back, leaving these gaping holes of burning, singed fabric, pristine skin underneath. Love to know how they did that.
It's very cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
really
then,
cool.
And then I think we have to mention his abs at least once in an episode. But when he takes that gun and then just literally holds it directly and just shoots, and you see full on sparks.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
So
that's
cool.
nice. I just want to see more. Like, I think the fun part of this character is he is super strong. I want to see him go in and full on break things apart and like break chains. Have some kind of bracers on at some point with chains hanging like.
I definitely want to see more of Luke Cage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on that note, John, what's your next point?
My next point is the Hannibal forensics of Misty Knight right at the start, where, she's zoning out and Raphael is like saying, you've got to look at the detail. You just stood there kind of zombied out looking at the board with all the photos and all those different things up, on the corkboard. And I like, she's transported back, and to me this just reminded me of the Hannibal series that we covered over on TV Podcast Industries, and just how the scenes are recreated, and she's figuring it out, and from that it basically prompts them to go after Chico. That really, it looked like he wasn't the one prepared to do any of the killing. He really didn't want to do this. He was probably just after the dosh, and ultimately, he's now in deep water over it. So that was really cool how they did that kind of work. And again, that links very much into a Sherlock type of how Sherlock would do this as well.
Absolutely.
So I mean, for Paul McGuigan, it's another reference to that kind of camera work and that kind of idea, how a detective recreates the scene. So I really thought that was cool, and it just reminded me Sherlock and Hannibal.
Yeah, I definitely was expecting Misty to say, and this is my design.
Yeah,
just like in Hannibal.
Exactly.
I love the recreation of the scene. I thought it was cool seeing it, with her walking through it and things going on all around her. It was just really well put together. Really cool idea.
Actually, I really like that. For a second, I didn't know what was going on when
I was
literally like, holy shit, she in another gun battle? Oh, yeah. And then it made sense. I like the use of it, and it's very, very Sherlockian, if we want to call it that.
Okay. We have a new word, people.
Yeah, I'm going to coin that phrase. But I'm kind of, I don't want it to go too far. I don't want, so we now know that she does use this a lot. She stares off into the distance as he says to her, "You're staring at that wall, it's scary."
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want that to be used a lot, because then it's like she's gonna now I'm calling this, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. She's going to look back at the scene and she's going to be looking at a photo of Luke, and then she's going to be figuring out how all the bullets bounced off him, and then she's going to come to the realization that he's powered.
Right.
And I'm like, no, because then you're going to use it on Pop's place, then you're going to use it on some other place. When we know he goes down a hallway, he has his own hallway scene. She's going to be using it on the hallway scene, going, well, if he's powered and he's barging through with a door, I'm like, no.
Maybe.
It was great. I just don't want it overused.
Certainly. Yeah, totally agree.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Lovely to bring it in as a touch on the show. I'm not sure whether they're going to see it every single week or anything like that. You know, they're now involved in the investigation, the two of them. So I'm not too sure how much other investigation they're going to be doing. But we may see it once or twice more in the show, and that's fine. Definitely one of the things with Hannibal, I remember saying it when we were doing those podcasts, that if it was used every single episode, it would get really, really irritating. Luckily, they pull back from it pretty quickly as well, that style, but it's a cool, interesting way of doing things. Not many people watched Hannibal either, so it's good to use something like that again.
Yeah. So, Derek, what's your next point?
I'm going to take Turk Barrett. Can I take Turk?
Go for it. Yeah.
Although that is one of my points as well.
We're all going to talk about Turk.
Everybody wants
Turk's
to talk about Turk.
tip-off.
Yeah, Turk Barrett coming over from Daredevil Season 1. He was in Daredevil Season 2, and he was in the bridging comic between Daredevil and Jessica Jones. So he's been involved in all of the shows, even if one of them was only a comic book version. So pretty cool to see him coming over to Luke Cage. I love his reaction, and that's all I'm going to talk about. I'll let you guys talk about the damage that he does, but I just love his reaction to Harlem, which is like, you know, I've taken a break from Hell's Kitchen, getting out of there because it's a bit crazy. And then after, 1 day, 2 days in Harlem, he's like, you guys are crazy. I'm going back up where it's safe and normal up in
And
Hell's
most
Kitchen.
of that was because he was playing chess.
Exactly, I know, yeah. But kind of cool that he inserted himself in Pop's barbershop to basically monitor them, is what it seemed like. You know, he was playing chess the whole time, but it seemed like he almost placed himself there to get information on Chico, because the call had been put out by Cottonmouth to find Chico, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Like, he is a wily operator, and the thing is,
Well, he tries to be.
by doing that, well, he is, because he saw Chico, and he's caused untold damage. He is the, the reason why Luke Cage goes into the business, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly now. He does the tip-off, and doesn't get a tip.
That's right. That's right.
For me, I always loved this character in the other shows. What I did discover was that I liked the chess scene, the banter back and forward between Turk and, we don't think we've been introduced to the other gentleman's name in the barbershop. But when they were playing chess, that was good banter.
It was.
And then they just straight away made him very dislikable, because he just walked in and then straight away he left. And you're like, oh no, Turk was all about himself, just selling, like, anytime Daredevil brings the smackdown on him, he's like, look, I'm just here to make money. I'm just doing my thing. And then here you fully see the dark side of Turk. The Turkish delight dark. The dark Turkish delight, if you want to call it. I don't know. I'm glad he's going back to Hell's Kitchen. I'm glad it was just kind of a nice cameo, per se. But they have made him now a more dislikable character.
I agree, but I suppose in Turk's defense, and he's one of those characters, he probably didn't know what he was signing up to here. He probably didn't know who he was handing Chico over to. He may have gotten the call going, 20 grand if you see this guy in Harlem. Cool, I'm down for that. That's going to give you some money. I'll get the money, get it paid. Stupidly, of course, he gives the full information to the guys that are supposed to be paying him before he gets the money. So that's obviously Turk's mistake. That's his standard. But then he follows them down, and then goes back to Cottonmouth's place, bumps into them they're hashing out what the details of what happened, I suppose, over in Pop's barbershop. So Again, another stupid Turk Barrett move, he's had a couple of those before. So he kind of falls through the situation rather than him being totally evil or totally dark. I think he was just trying to get the money out of Cottonmouth and then following up to get the money, just doing stupid things, and putting himself in stupid situations, really.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the nice bit now that we do know, the extra information is now his raison d'etre with Misty Knight. That we now know his rap sheet is a hell of a lot longer than we originally thought.
That's true.
Yeah. He's well known by Misty Knight. He's not even from Harlem. He's from Hell's Kitchen, and he's known to her. And I was like, I was kind of hoping he was going to be some kind of informant for her or something, because I thought that would be really that would be really cool, because that could then connect her to Daredevil quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not the case.
I love how she describes it, though. It's that your record has so many hits it could put out its own record. Which I thought was pretty cool. That's a real Misty Knight phrase. I like it.
Yeah, and also when he sends the message to Tone about the location of Chico, again another little Sherlock motif there, with the text message popping up on the screen.
That's right. Yeah, I really like that, because it's something that you see in Sherlock. Something that I think I was introduced to in Sherlock. Where you see exactly what the text message is that's coming in or that's going out. What I liked about this one, a slight tweak from Sherlock, it has predictive text as well, which I thought was quite cool.
Yeah, that was
cool. So it's putting up the wrong words on screen and then making them into the actual text message, which I just think is a really nice touch. Chris, do you want to take us on with your next point?
I sure do. So I'm going to talk about the speech at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hoping that this was the speech that they gave Mike Coulter to actually audition with, and that's how he won it, because that beautifully delivered.
It was really good.
It was excellent.
He looked so angry, yet calm. He looked like he was ready to snap that poor kid.
Yeah.
But didn't. He was restrained to a degree.
But passionate, really good. Yeah.
Absolutely. The poor kid who was holding a gun on him?
Yeah, well,
No, I get it.
The poor kid who was holding a gun at a superpowered guy with bulletproof skin who could snap him like a twig.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Absolutely.
And I just think it was brilliantly brought through.
Definitely.
The theme that we have, which is this black, powerful guy that the center was named after, the story of that, and told in a way that made sense to me, 30-something Caucasian guy from Dublin, Ireland. I went, that's a really cool story, and I really like it. It's the powerful message. Except I was like, oh, wow, okay. I didn't think that would translate, but it does.
Really does.
And
really
it was just it was a beautiful delivery. And then obviously I've already talked about the torso bullet thing. That was a cherry on top, I think.
Really
actually, no. The cherry on top was the poor kid running away. Did you see?
Go
back, watch how he runs. It wasn't a kind of like sprint. It was like legs flailing in the air kind of run.
Get me out of here fast. Yeah. No, really, really enjoyed it. Now, obviously, Luke Cage came from Jessica Jones, so he was obviously in that show for quite a while. I wonder if this is just the benefit of having an actor who's played the character on another show, 4 or 5 episodes, obviously. He's come over with the property to Cheo Coker. Effectively, he's already cast when Cheo Coker comes on board and says, right, this is what I want to do with the character. And he's kind of almost looked out. He's got an actor who can deliver stuff like this, and has given some really meaty dialogue here and some really good stuff to get across, and he does a sterling job. Really, really thought this scene was fabulous. Really did.
Yeah, it was excellent. I mean, as I say, the whole reference to the Christmas Attucks, and just how it links to the start of the episode, and it's actually post Pop's death. He's raw, he's emotional, and just that the final coup de grace, I suppose, of it all, which is that he sees then Mariah Dillard, as I said, going into her office with the bag, which he had seen with Chico. So, that connection between the two cousins, and that connection here with Pop's death is now has been made by him. So, he's even probably more pissed, to be honest. And I mean, What was the cousins? It was Mama Mabel, wasn't it? That was their kind of the matriarch of the family that kind of pulled them together.
Yeah.
You
It does feel like we're gonna hear a bit more about her in future.
I hope so. I hope she's kind of like a Madame Gao type of character.
Oh,
that's,
that'd be amazing.
Really a real matriarch that really sort of ran things. That would be cool, I think.
Absolutely.
I do think that this is the setup for the hallway scene.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Like, this is the he's about to go rip off the door and go straight in now. I think that's the opening that we've wanted. And it was like, it's going to be amazing in blood and guts and amazingness.
As you know, listeners, we don't watch ahead, so we haven't seen episode 3, and we've had to stop right before or right after the end of episode 2 to record our podcast, obviously. So we'll get there. We'll get there. You may have already seen it if you're listening back to our podcast after getting all the way through the episodes, but we haven't. So good guess, Chris. Though I think.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I suppose for my next point, I suppose just after talking about the Mama Mabel, and this matriarch, I just think, the chat between Cornell and Mariah, in his club, as they're looking over the club, as, the band, is playing. Who was that? It was
Faith Evans.
Yeah, Faith Evans.
Oh, wow, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Beautiful scene.
All these things, respect, power, money, ancestors, struggle, and what they mean to one another. And, that Mariah is there. She wants the respect and the power. Cottonmouth wants the money and the power. And, I loved how, the struggle that they've had to go through and what their ancestors have had to go through. And they kind of bring this out in this, like, amazingly sort of deep conversation about all these different drivers in their life.
Yeah.
And whilst they're connected, they're still quite different. I'd love to know sort of Mama Mabel's kind of role in all of this, and I really hope we get to maybe see something of that, in the same way that we're probably going to get some backstory like we did in the first episode of Luke Cage with regards to Seagate Prison. To get that idea of how those two big antagonists are working, like we got with Wilson Fisk in season 1, because it provides that context, it gives that additional thing. And I mean, I love that, I think a community or a group of people who have been disenfranchised for various reasons and, given the opportunity, how these notions of power, and money and rich and poor, respect, disrespect, and all that begin to form. I thought that in the club was absolutely fantastic.
It really was, and it was one of my points as well, but I just really, the core of it for me was Cornell being so convinced that he's right, in the face of, Mariah, who also is convinced that this is the way to go into politics, lead your community through that. You don't want to be a gangster. That's not what our ancestor died for. And Cornell's response to it going, no, that's exactly what they died for. They died so that people like us could rise up and take over a city. Really different perspectives, both in the same family, both looking for power, both completely convinced that their way is the right way.
So good.
So good to see these two actors just going at it in a great way. Really, really cool.
I really think that we may see that split as a family, in terms of we'll get a flashback where we've already seen Cornell Stokes run with Pops as a kid, so maybe she was at boarding school, so she'd be a better person, and then we'll see now potentially is the flashback or the discussion of how they rejoin together, because she does seem to be the very much anti everything that Cottonmouth is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just don't understand how. I want to know that story. It's intriguing enough.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I feel that motif of family first, that's come from somewhere. That's not just it's not just a saying between these two. There's something that's made them bind together and go, the Stokes are going to be working together from now on. We'll never put anybody else before us, probably. Something like that. And maybe that's Mama Mabel, so we'll see as we go along.
Absolutely. And an interesting thing that Cottonmouth says in Pop's barbershop as well is, I think, if I heard right, he calls him Henry. So I don't know whether Pops' name is Henry. But he gives him a slap on the back as he walks out and says, loyal to my folks. There is this understanding when we see the history and again, all these different interconnections in the society and even just the flashback to Fredo, Cottonmouth and Pops, as youngsters, just all these different connections and the code, how it relates to this code. And how at the end then, again, it's another reason why, Tone is chucked off the roof, onto the top of the car. Like, just so good, I think.
Fabulous scene too. Fabulous scene. That was also my final point, was that one. But I do want to quickly call out the other scene in the episode that I loved, which was the barbershop scene at the start when Cornell walks in, and the tension that was dripping out of that scene when Cornell and Shades and Tone come into the barbershop with Pops and Luke kind of facing them down, or Luke making the comment, I've got some fresh towels here. If you've got some dirty towels, I'll take them out. No problem at all to Pops. Pops knowing exactly what he's talking about, obviously. Really cool. The voice going through Luke's head where he's looking at Shades on one side, Tone on the other, and going, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and then we're done, basically. I could take these guys out this quickly, love that little moment. A very cool, again, almost Sherlock-like moment where he's playing through his head how his fighting style would allow him to take out his opponents. Thought that was really cool as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I was curious, though, does Shades know who he is yet? Because Shades got pretty close.
He did.
It's not, to be fair, when Shades first passed him, okay, he was behind a kind of shelving piece with his head down. Maybe he was just any other, man. But Shades was right there. He was right there. In my head, it was like, Shades gonna get up and say something to him straight away.
There's a little moment between the two of them at the end of the kind of conversation that Shades has just after Luke goes out, or just before Luke goes out to get the towels and make that reference, where you kind of think that Shades has realized who he is, and that's why Luke is making the comment to Pops, potentially. Luke's kind of seen it in his eyes and gone, oh, okay, actually, this guy does know who I am. Maybe it's my chance to take him down before he tells anybody else whatever it is that Luke's trying to hide from them, So I think it's absolutely possible that he knows who he is, but doesn't want to say anything for some reason. Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe they were friends in prison, and now they're on the opposite side. Shades doesn't want to reveal the connection in front of Cottonmouth, perhaps. Something like that.
Yeah, we did get the glasses piece again. Again, so I am thinking there is something here in that, I'm probably reading into it, but Shades takes off his shades and looks at Luke, and I'm going, please tell me he's telepathic or can read, body language or something or he can see in the dark, and that's why he has to take his shades off, put shades on consistently, because he's super, I don't know, but there's something there.
I am going to go on record now and say that I just think it's the standard of you're cooler than cool if you wear shades indoors at all times, so nobody can see your eyes and nobody can see what your real feelings are, because that's where you see the eyes. You see where people's real feelings are through their eyes. So I think that's the only reason you wear shades. It makes it look cool.
Pitch black midnight at on top of a roof outside.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Just like Blues Brothers.
Hey. Let's not bring them into it. That was a whole other level of cool.
Absolutely.
This guy looks like some mix between Drake and a Pokemon.
Are you going to insult the Rossi here? Or do you want me to edit that out?
No, I'm sticking with this. I'm keeping with this because Drake, that little, the guy who does the Hotline Bling with the really bad dance. I could see Shades doing that really bad dance with with his necklace kind of swinging. I'm just like, I do get it though. I do get it. And I think I'm trying to build in something because I would like, after Jessica Jones, with Jessica, we saw these great powerhouses of powers fighting the two different styles. One very much strength, one very much mind. And as much as I love this Kingpin Daredevil season 1 piece, this is it is different because Luke is so powered.
Yeah.
He is unbreakable. So I'm like, there needs to be something going against him. So maybe Diamondback is similar, or
It's
something
entirely
like
possible.
that.
Remember, diamonds are unbreakable, so it's interesting that is the villain for the show.
Yeah, like I think that is going to come definitely, and it has to. But I also think that I think it's nice. I think it's a nice contrast. I think that the guy that would be the big bruiser or the puncher in all of the 3 Marvel Netflix to date is actually the one that reads the books and actually tries to recoil from the violence as much as he can. And in this, and obviously with what's happened now with Pops, this is where that's the straw that's broken the camel's back.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So I'd be interested now to see like how that goes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Chris, what is your last point?
I'm gonna talk about Mercedes Night.
Okay.
Oh, I think you may have gotten my point
So,
as well.
Excuse me, my name is Misty.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was a fantastic scene. It's
Certainly
obviously,
was.
It was great to see her in full detective mode with Pops, and you could see that they were friends, but he understood that she was kept going a detective, all that.
Yeah.
But I loved then when Luke came out.
Definitely.
That was my piece. It was like the meeting of
so
Misty and Luke, and there was tension, there was humor, there was actual
Loved it.
aggravation, but then there was also sexual tension, and it was just the banter back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I did love the Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. I know that's hopefully where they're going to go to, but this
Already
back
been
and
there.
forth, yeah, okay, so it's the rebound girl. I did love this banter. This is the kind of relationship I do enjoy, which is, okay, there is that a bit of, like, will they, won't they? Does he hate her? Does she hate him?
Yeah.
Are they they're going to be on the wrong sides of the kind of the law? And then just that comment that topped it off is like, we just had coffee.
I love it.
And I was like, going,
that was
yeah,
And,
coffee.
and I really like Luke's shot back across the room at her with, I see you have better clothes for detecting than you did for auditing, which is a nice little touch.
And she talks about telling the truth, and he goes, yeah, person, like telling you their real name. Like, and he looks straight at it. Yeah, really good. Really, really
Yeah,
good.
Really
it was
enjoyed
just
that.
a fantastic scene. I would love a buddy cop episode between the two of them, where it is that level where they're shooting jibes at each other, and it's there is that sexual tension, and there's going to be humor, and they even just the two of them breaking down one of, say, Cottonmouth's gang rings in a warehouse. That for like 15 minutes would be an amazing
Yeah.
part of it, because they have a bit of witty banter, almost like I'm reminded of Lethal Weapon.
Right.
I just did love this scene.
John, do you have a final point?
That was my final point as well, was Mercedes Night, and that whole scene down in the barbershop. As I say, for me, I love the fact that, you know, Pop's send-off was how the barbershop was just this whole kind of scene throughout this episode.
Yeah.
I really kind of liked it. You know, from the history lesson through to, you know, the ominous sort of arrival of Cottonmouth, through to this kind of cheeky little bit, with, between Misty and Luke, and Pop's actually sort of clocking it, through to obviously the tragedy of Pop's getting snotted.
Yeah.
In his own, place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's the final points for this
Yeah.
episode. Quick note for me, just another scene I absolutely loved was Mariah Dillard and Stokes standing across from each other, and Stokes says to her, "Are you okay with this?" And she goes, "Well, I'm okay with the extortion part, but the murder, no, I am not okay with the murder. I will never be okay with the murder." Thought it was really well delivered,
Yeah,
a really funny
really,
little moment
really
for her as well. John, any notes?
Yeah, we have, Luke Cage basically says that he was from Chicago, which kind of links to the moment after he has, he thinks he's killed Danny Rand and goes off to Chicago.
In the comic books. Yeah.
In the comic books. And Pops kind of says, well, we know you're not, you know, where are you really from? When he's talking to him. I think he's from Savannah, Georgia, from down south.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that aspect. And then I just thought it was the height of cool how the parley exchange where Pop sends Luke Cage to the club and Cottonmouth thinks he's kind of being clever, going, "You're fired," and Luke Cage fires back at him. No, I'm not. I quit before I walked in.
Absolutely.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Absolute height of cool. Really, really class.
Absolutely. Do you think he ever got paid for those days of work that he didn't get the money
I don't
for?
think so.
I don't think so.
That is the worst boss ever.
Uh-huh. Chris, any final notes?
My final point is, and I just Tone's death scene.
Mm-hmm.
It actually just the way it was filmed. They could have done a long view shot of it where they saw him drag him across, but no, it was a quick cut to him flying over the edge.
It looks so realistic.
Yeah, and I'm wondering.
It really did, didn't it? Yeah.
I'm wondering if it was a crash mat, like literally stunt double piece.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but it
With
looks
just
so realistic. I know the cut was as he goes over the top of the wall, but the camera's following then as he crushes through the car. I presume potentially the car is CGI replaced from the crash mat or something like that, but it looked pretty realistic.
Oh no, and that scared.
I haven't seen that actor in anything else, and I haven't seen anything future that he's doing. I hope they didn't just throw him over a building.
Oh God, I think we'd know it's a death on scene.
Probably. I have to check and see if they have that. No animals or humans were harmed in the filming of this. I want to just see that.
If it just says animals, we're in trouble.
No, absolutely. I've got one more note as well. I actually felt in this episode that, I don't know, in episode 1, I really thought that Shades could actually, snap at some point and kill Cottonmouth.
Right.
I actually thought there was that kind of notion that he really didn't care much. He in the employ of Diamondback and all of this, and that, if Diamondback had ordered it, he would do that on his behalf.
Right.
And he still kept that ominous tone whilst they went to Pop's barber with Cottonmouth and Tone at the start.
Yep.
But afterwards, when he realized that Tone had broken the code up on the roof, I thought it was a really nice, subtle change in how Shades interacted with Cornell Stokes. Was that he was like, I told him not to break the code, and he's even saying it at the barbershop. I told him not to do that, it felt like he understood that he was in the company of someone, like his own boss.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that in episode 1, and that's why I kind of asked originally about whether there was an uneven relationship there. And this now I started to feel that, Cottonmouth is, asserting it. So that's just one of the notes.
Nice little moment with Hiroshi, especially when he says, I understand what Pop's meant to you as a person. He understands the relationship they had.
Yeah,
really cool. That leaves us for our own little code here, guys. Chris, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage, Season 1, Episode 2, Code of the Streets?
I do. I can't say that I don't. The direction, the actual cinematography, again, the reason I bring this up is that there's not many episodes or TV shows that do take that I'm taken aback by the certain shot or the way a certain scene is shot. Mm-hmm. For example, the best example I can give is the very first time we saw the hallway scene in Daredevil Season 1.
Yeah.
In a TV show, you're going, oh wow, that's a unique take on it. And I think we haven't had these hallway scenes or stuff. It's more the slow motion shot of Pop's Tone going over the edge. Mm-hmm. The zoom in on Maria as she has Chico's bag, but you still have Luke Cage's shoulder is slightly blurred.
Yeah.
It's very well done. I'm sad to see Pops go. I think they probably could have kept him for at least another episode, but I see from a story-driven wise, this makes sense.
Yeah.
We now have Luke Cage, as of episode 3, being the hero for the right reasons. Although I will miss the higher bit. I don't know if they'll bring that in maybe towards the end. Anyway, great, fantastic. I completely defend this episode.
Excellent.
So Derek, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage?
I do. I think this is another great episode of Luke Cage. Really enjoyed it, actually. It's keeping the momentum of the storyline going. Loving Maria Dillard and Cottonmouth together. I think it's been really interesting. Love this concept of breaking the criminal code. It's always something that's been around. I think I know the criminal code as well, even though I'm not a criminal. I think it's one of those ones that everybody knows what the code on the street is. You don't mess with your own. Some people are protected, that don't hurt other people. It's great that it's been brought into the show, and to see the vengeance of Cottonmouth against someone that does break this was fascinating and really, really well done. Really enjoyed it. Love Misty Knight in this episode once again. Really looking forward to seeing more of her. And Mike Coulter doing a great job again, with a fantastic closing scene and opening scene for this episode.
Yeah, I think we've seen quite a lot of Misty Knight, actually.
And John, do you defend this episode of Luke Cage?
I do. I'm giving this 4 bullet-riddled barber chairs out of 5. I just love the fact that Pop's Barbershop was the epicenter of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
From threats through to him being a fatherly figure, through to history, finding out more about Luke Cage, about Chico, about Pops, through to obviously the massacre of him by Tone. I loved the history element with regards to the literature, the little green book, Crispus Attucks, but also, we get the hint of Mama Mabel in here, and we see Pop's relationship to Fredo and Cottonmouth, and that explains why Chico is so important, and it ultimately ends up with Pop's death. The Tones fall from grace down 30 floors onto the top of a car. Really cool. I mean, excellently shot. And, again, Misty Knight's involvement again in the barbershop, really cool. On the basketball court, really cool. And I have to say, with terms like Parley being thrown around and code, I did feel like Pirates of the Caribbean. I really enjoyed all these elements of this episode of Luke Cage. And absolutely defend it.
Excellent. Well, hopefully you've watched a couple of episodes over the weekend and want to send us in some feedback about them. So hopefully we're going to be dropping in a little bit of feedback around here. So we got a fair bit of feedback in over the first weekend after Luke Cage. It was on Netflix, over on our Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV podcast. First piece of feedback came in from John Tara Higley, who says, I was a bit surprised you guys didn't dwell too much on how incredibly stylized the pacing and line delivery was. I'm glad I went back and rewatched all those 70s flicks, because this was like Stranger Things, but for a less well-known genre and set in a current day. It was a bit jarring, but in the best possible way. I've binged since, and I'm a bit ahead. No spoilers. I can't really tell if binging has made this less noticeable, or it's not as stark in later episodes.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with John. We didn't probably dwell on it. I think it's more because they do it now in a way that it's not as noticeable. It is blended a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
When you mention it, then yes, you can kind of see that they've broken with the 3-part pacing standard that we would usually get in some of the older episodes of, say, like Daredevil, where it's like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, where this is a bit more fast-paced.
Yeah. And the dialogue itself does feel, I think one of our other listeners, Kev, said that he felt it was much more like a blaxploitation film of the 70s. It does feel like that type of 70s movie, the dialogue between the characters. I did mention on the first episode that I was trying to get my ear in at the start of the first conversation, they were having the barbershop, and then realized they were talking about basketball, which was why I was so confused and so lost during it. But it is definitely a very different paced dialogue and very differently laid out kind of scenes between all these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thanks for the feedback, John, because I mean, it was something I actually wasn't that focused or clued into. I mean, I think it was mainly that I was kind of expecting that type of delivery on the basis of the genre, but also it was the same with The Wire. I mean, it's kind of very snappy, I think almost kind of poetic or it's almost like statements that are always delivered, and so it didn't worry me too much that it was that kind of delivery, because I felt that it kind of reflected those genres, like you've said, and have watched, but also I remember that being the case sort of in The Wire as well. Just that was a real sort of characteristic, I thought, of that, and I think that comes through again here. But thanks for that, John, because it is certainly a very different way of doing it than we've seen in Jessica Jones and obviously Daredevil.
So the Stranger Things of 70s blaxploitation is John's basic point here. I like that touch. Also, John Tara Higley goes on to say, great episode. Thanks for doing this. I first started listening because I burned through all of DD season 2. I was very excited and needed a podcast. Searched, found a few. Yours was the best.
Aww.
Cheers. Thank you, John. That's really nice.
I'm so glad you're still with us
Thank
for
you.
our Netflix coverage. Our next piece of feedback comes in from Claire Payne, who is a listener over on our Gotham TV podcast. So great that you've joined us over on Defenders TV podcast, Claire.
Welcome to the real comic book ecosystem.
Ooh. Chris doesn't do our Gotham podcast with us, so...
No, I do like DC, but I just Marvel's better. That's all. I'm just saying.
Oh, let's not
Okay,
get into
let's
that.
not
No, we're
go
not
there.
getting into that now.
We are lovers of both Marvel and DC, and I've enjoyed all of their shows reasonably equally, except for Luke Cage is slightly better than most. So Claire says, I managed to watch 2 episodes last night of the show. I really enjoyed it. Loved the pacing. Loved how Luke was in a community where his discussions with Pop helped him decide what to do next. Detectives Misty Knight was a fantastic character. Really enjoyed the music running throughout. A very different Marvel show. So far, so good.
Cheers, Claire. Yeah, no, it's certainly something I think different for Marvel, for comic book TV, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really nice sort of melting pot of the music, the style, and the vibe of this show, I think. Definitely.
Absolutely. A quick one from Ronaldo, one of our regular contributors, says, like the history of Pop and Stokes, or IP Pop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
he
we-
really did go to the big barber shop in the sky. I think that's what I replied to Ronaldo. So yeah, R.I.P. Pops. He'll be cutting the beards of St. Peter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really love the idea of bringing Pop and Stokes together as characters, that there was a history between the two of them. Thought that was a really cool idea. And finally, Debbie Fisher has a question. She says, okay, stupid questions.
There are no stupid questions.
No such thing, Debbie. Delighted you've given us some questions here. She says, number 1, Luke Cage is supposed to take place after Jessica Jones, right? After he lost the bar. Yep, definitely takes place after that. He's down in his luck, no longer has his awesome Harley Davidson, much to my chagrin, because I've put the Harley Davidson as our central cover photograph for all of our coverage of Luke Cage, and he doesn't even have the Harley. He's completely down in his luck.
Yet. Maybe.
Yes, maybe he'll get it back. Number 2, he says, do we know why he went to jail? Have I totally missed something? So Luke Cage lost his bar, went to jail, and ended up in Harlem. I don't think so. I think what's happened here is that he ran with his tail between his legs back to Harlem after losing his bar, his job, his girlfriend, finding out that his girlfriend killed his wife, and obviously lost his Harley. And then I think the backstory of Luke, where he got the powers, is going to be coming up in a future episode, but we believe that that's happened while he was in jail.
Yeah, so that's the flashbacks. I think we saw in the first episode when Shades walks through the kitchen at Cottonmouth's club. Luke gets that quick flashback to Seagate Prison. So I think the timeline is that Luke Cage has gone to jail. He's had his experimentation where he's received these powers. He's escaped or been let go and released. He has then gone to Hell's Kitchen. He's lost his bar, and then he's headed off back to Harlem after losing his bar, and seeking refuge as to what to do following that explosion in Jessica Jones.
Yeah, and we think that's coming up in a future episode. We're probably going to see that backstory play out in the show.
Yeah. I personally think the way that they're going to do it is, first off, he's in jail. Mm-hmm. He gets locked up. The experimentation happens. He then meets Reva in jail. Or she's like a psychologist or something.
Yeah.
He breaks out, or he's released, etc. They then start dating, married. That's why he meets Pops and stuff. Then she dies. Mm-hmm. He couldn't face it based on some of the conversations between him and Pops. Yeah. I think that he then runs away.
Right.
Based on her death.
Of course.
And then sets up the bar, etc. It's like there's a longer gap
Controversial,
I know.
Chris.
Yeah, no, that would make logical sense,
I think he knows Reva before he goes to jail.
I think he does, but I think you're right that she obviously dies after he gets out of jail. He doesn't go out of jail and go to Hell's Kitchen. That's an interesting
Yeah,
idea.
because it was just the pop said something along the lines of, when I was first introduced to you as a convict.
Yes.
Very
So
interesting.
I think that's, and based on also the flashback we had in episode 1 with Reva, and it sounded like she was Doctor, very similar to like the Harlequin character prior to her becoming Harlequin, Dr. Quinzel. She was there, she's helping people in Seagate. That's where they potentially fall in love. That's where he goes, then goes to Pops. They have all that time there.
So do you think she was involved in the experimentation in the company that did the experimentation on him, or the doctor that did the experimentation on him? That's why she had the video of Kilgrave and of Luke. Do you think they were both involved in the same project?
Yeah.
And that's why Kilgrave went after her to get back the thumb drive that had all those images of Kilgrave on it? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, we're going to hold off. I have this
Yeah.
long-held theory, similar to like everything's connected in standard MCU. I think everything's connected in this Marvel Netflix.
Absolutely.
MCU.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to knowing more, though.
Yeah, I'm not too sure I agree with that, so I think the bet is on. I think she's got nothing to do with the prison,
Okay.
personally.
But then how does she have all the footage
And information and knowledge.
of
Kilgrave's
Kilgrave?
experimentation.
But that's not in Seagate. Is it?
No, that wasn't in Seagate. But
And does she have Luke Cage on there? I didn't think she...
I thought there was something about.
I don't remember that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
So we'll
Let's wait
see.
and
We'll
see.
see. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting stuff.
All right. Thanks so much for that feedback, Debbie, and everybody else over on our Facebook group. Pop on over to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV podcast to discuss the episodes as you go. We'll be putting up spoiler posts, so you can just pop in there and leave your thoughts and not look at the ones that you haven't seen yet, like we're doing.
Exactly. You can place your bets on which theory will win. Now.
Team Chris.
Team John.
I'm just looking forward to seeing exactly what happens on the show. I've got no theory about exactly what's going to happen, but good thoughts, guys.
That was amazing feedback, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was cool. Thank you so much for all your feedback.
Hopefully.
If not, we just literally had a pregnant pause and went, that was amazing feedback, where there was no feedback. But we hope that you do send us feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did they do that, Chris?
How do they do that? Would you like to know? Well, I'll tell you. They can go onto iTunes and they can leave us a review there with some of their thoughts. They can also go over to our website, defenderstvpodcast.com, and in there they can leave us a 90-second small audio review or feedback if they will. Not only that, we also have a Facebook page where they can literally send us some of their thoughts, but more importantly, we have a Facebook group, Defenders TV Podcast Group, where they can join and they can tell us what they thought of episodes 1 and 2 so far. Please note, if you're going to go above episode 2 after probably October 4th, before October 7th, where we'll be reviewing episode 3, put a big giant spoilers in, because there are other people that are in there who may not be watching it as quick as everyone else.
Absolutely. I'll be doing the same thing as I usually do on the group. I normally make a post, which is just a spoiler-filled post, and you can post underneath that any thoughts you have on the episodes, anything you want to share with the podcast, just so anybody else that's watching at a different pace won't see any spoilers of future episodes. But yes, as always, thank you so much for listening. Always forward, boys. Always forward.
So, just on that note, before you leave, don't forget you can also find us at DefendersCast over on Twitter. We'll be back on Friday with episode 3, aka Who's Gonna Take the Weight? Is it you? Is it me? Is it Derek? Is it John?
I don't know until I listen to the Gangstar song, but I'm listening to it all week before that comes up, so.
Exactly. It's the only way. We gotta figure out who's gonna take the weight. My bet's on Luke. Kinda, I don't know why, but my bet's there.
Do you think he'd be lifting a building over his head like the famous Spider-Man moment where he's lifting the whole building over his head? No?
No, I'm pretty much sure he's going to be bending someone.
Possibly. Possibly.
It's a fair bet.
It could be Jessica Jones with AKA in the title.
Oh yes, by the way, listeners, I'm adding all the AKAs. It's not actually in the title, but I like it. It's also known as Jessica. It keeps Jessica keep coming in.
Exactly. Well.
AKA Power Man.
All right, well, join us on Friday for that episode. Looking forward to speaking about it.
Alright guys, see you all soon. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
You think I'm holding back? You think I'm holding back? I'm out to save you.
Thanks for listening to Defenders TV Podcast, a TV podcast industries production. If you want to help out the podcast and you've enjoyed listening to us, there's some really easy ways to do it. If you can share our episodes through your social media channels like Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, or Google+, that gets some extra listeners into us. If you want to leave us a review on iTunes or a rating, just leave a 5-star rating, click the button, or go to iTunes through defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. We'll take you straight to our page and leave us a review or a rating there. That always helps out independent podcasts. And also, as always, we love to hear your feedback about the shows. Interaction with our audience is what we really, really love. So you can send us feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.